Dear friends and fellows from What's in Store Show, we've prepared a little episode for you with the best moments of 2024. We want you to enjoy some great holidays, and we will see you around in 2025. So.
We're an early-only fund for the bigger part of our existence. And then a couple of funds ago, basically what we noticed is that we're great early pickers, and a lot of our companies, even at later stages, are still great investment opportunities. Mm-hmm. However, we weren't able to invest, and there wasn't as much growth capital in Europe, so more often than not, it was foreign VCs coming in and doing the growth rounds. And that was leaving a ton of money on the table because from a multiple perspective, sure, you have a higher multiple on the early stages, but from an absolute cash perspective, if you're investing 50 million, do 3x, that's sort of 150 return. If you invest 1 million and do 10x, it's 10 million. So that brought us to expand our funds to include a growth mandate to keep investing in our portfolio companies. And with that doing very well, eventually with this latest fund generation, which is a 2023 vintage, we split the vehicles in two funds that can act independently so that it's not only follow-on capital, but it's also first ticket in capital.
Yeah, that's nice. I just wrote down something that you said. We are great early pickers. What do you make great early pickers?
What makes us great? Well, I think it's more an art than a science. But by now, it's track record really. I think one saying that always holds true in hedge funds, in public markets, is past returns are not indicative of future returns. That doesn't fully hold true in VC and early VC because there is this self-fulfilling prophecy and this reinforcing mechanism by which if you start your journey strong, and there might be some luck, there might be talent, whatever that might be, then those same people that you backed and went on to build billion-dollar companies, they come back in the ecosystem, right? Either as serial founder or as angels, whatever the case might be. And if you were the catalyst to their success and you had a good relationship with them, chances are they'll first come to you. Mm-hmm. So at the very early stage where things are not yet public and the information is not freely available, like at the hedge fund level, if you start getting all this proprietary deal flow of people coming first to you and then to someone else, and the pool of good entrepreneurs that you're backing expands and expands and expands, that sort of self-reinforces that being a good picker aspect.
I agree. Which we would be back at the most difficult thing is
to start.
To build the first fund and the third fund and to be able there. I like the disclaimer that would be different to what you always see in these investment channels, that is past return doesn't guarantee. In this case, it would be past returns will guarantee you this future.
It won't guarantee, but it makes it easier, of course, if you had, because you build a brand and a track record and your network, and it's a network-based business, right? It holds less true at the late stages because, again, at the late stages, it's more public information. Mm-hmm. So even if you have a direct link to the founder, some other fund might come and offer better terms. And given that it's about the money and it's public information, you might not necessarily win the deal in the same way that you would at the pre-seed stage.
Also, it's true, I think, that even when you're invested in public companies, it's not a science, it's more than an art. But I think the art is less.
Yeah, there's
the bigger
data.
They are.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why I guess. Okay, then you said also something interesting, that is we help them grow, of course, which I guess it would be related to the kind of the USP sort of HP. How do you help startups to grow?
Yeah, sure. I think if you abstract for a second, if a founder has multiple VC choices and he's in the privileged position that many people want him or her, it boils down to really three KPIs, in my opinion. The earlier you are, the more that personal connection matters. Mm-hmm. So that abstracts a bit from the fund you're in, because at the very, very early stage, you want a trusted partner, somebody that understands your business, that's going to help you, that's going to answer your calls. So maybe the great investor from the big brand that's 9-hour time zones away, as shiny and great as it sounds, might not be your best partner. So it starts with a human connection and a local human connection. Then the second part of it, so that's mainly up to each and every one of us, less to HV, but as a personal brand to build that connection with the founders. Secondly, there is the brand. Now, the brand, if you have a history of successes, of having IPO'd companies, etc., by itself is a bit of a signaling factor. If a great VC, great defined as big and successful, invests in your company, then you're more likely to get more attention, more follow-on capital, because people say, okay, that VC seems to consistently do well. I want to invest in the companies of that VC.
Yeah. Which is, by the way, sometimes it leads to this FOMO movement that there's always in VC that is horrible because of, then HB invested, so I have to invest, but I discarded this company 3 months ago.
Correct. And it's a factor, and it plays. And then there is the third factor, which is exactly what you said about the more broader support. And that's where size starts giving you an unfair advantage, because the way the industry work is obviously that the fees are percentage based on AUM. So the bigger you are, the more money you'll have to build operations around your fund beyond just a pure VC fund. And at the size we're at, we take minority investments. We are not operational involved, so it's not a PE model. However, we were able to build a platform structure that has many functions that are there to help advise or to make connections, etc., to founders, whether that's in recruiting, ESG, IT, finance operations setup, etc. There is all that package that comes with it that somebody taking HV money gets for free, in quotes.
Yeah.
And then most importantly of all, you buy yourself into a network of 200 plus portfolio companies. And the reality is, as good as a sparring partner as the investment manager is, there's always going to be a portfolio company that went through the same struggles you are going to. And
effect.
It's that network that you get in that really also sets HV apart from many other funds in the region.
And then some guys, that's easy, right? Because the company needs help in the beginning, and never confuse this. We're not the entrepreneur. There's different roles you have to play as a VC. There's the role of coach and mentor. There's the role of co-founder. There's the role of turnaround manager, and there's the role of investment banker, right? All of us play a bit of these 4 roles, but basically the question is, what do you focus on? And I'm clearly fully focused on being the coach and mentor to the people and helping them open doors. We're not the co-founders. Sometimes you get sucked into that, but I think that's not a good role to play. No. Many VCs do that, but it's not good, right? We give them money and we give them sparring and we give them access. That's what we do. And we see that as the coach, co-founder role. Sometimes companies get in trouble. And then you get suckered into giving them more money, helping them, being the turnaround manager. That's not our job, right? And I've learned this because I've done all the mistakes, so don't get me wrong. And then, of course, there's the role of investment banker, selling those companies. And sometimes you can sell. And I have been the guy actively making the sale happen in some of my companies. But usually, if they're great enough, they get bought anyway because the buyer knows he wants it. Or you need an M&A boutique, and there's a ton of good ones around here, or we help a bit. But basically, our role is coach and mentor. And that role I can easily play for 3 to 5 companies a year. And of course, as they grow, when they die, that's done. And when they grow, at some point, of course, the next bigger and then the next bigger VC comes in and takes over. And I'm happy to move to the backseat.
Yeah, that's good. That's I love what you explained, how clear it is and how clear it is in your mind, that I appreciate a lot, because I guess you also know how to set up expectations with the founders and with the company, like I'm this guy, like it's super clear.
Exactly. In Germany, we have a saying. Also, I tell founders two things, especially the last 20 years doing this. I told them two things. Number one, es ist eine Bringschuld und es ist eine Holschuld, nicht eine Bringschuld. That means in English, if you want something from me, it's your job to come to me and get it. It's not my job to bring it to you, right? So don't confuse that I'm your nanny, right? If you need something, come to me and I will help if I'm the guy that makes sense to help.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, as a founder, it's very easy. I mean, there's great founders who've done it before and they know it all. And you will see that these founders want very little time. They basically tell you, yeah, Daniel, you're smart, okay, but give me the money. and sometimes that's fine. But if I have nothing to add, that's not interesting either.
Yeah.
But overall, I think the question is really, you have to understand where you can add value. And I always say, I like to find the silver bullet. And the silver bullet is, what apart from money can I add to this business that's going to make it really sexy? And sometimes that's, or just grow faster. Let's forget the sexy, grow faster. Sometimes that's the right introduction. Sometimes that's explaining them how TV advertising works. Sometimes that's showing them that the information asymmetry today is in TikTok and not in Meta. I mean, there can be all sorts of things, right? But basically, giving them something extra that accelerates them. If it's just money, they can probably find that somewhere else too.
I really don't think in terms of perfect startup, because all the startups we would be looking at will have gaps. So the question is the company, does the company have really a privileged position or starting point to be able to make up for it, compensate, go faster than others? I think there's no company will have solved all the issues that they have, not at all. So, and these really vary from company to company. So in one case, it might be in early stage, it tends to be more the founders sometimes who are really have a very special mindset and that we want to back. On the growth stages, it can be the technology, it can be maybe the ability to adapt some kind of technology to very specific use case and industry, like this kind of domain expertise, combination of things. So it's very hard to kind of normalize and say this is the perfect investment. Normally, also, the very good investments are not obvious.
Very good investments are not obvious.
No, so when we've been looking back, some of our best investments were the ones that were more controversial among the team as well. And so that's why it's really not so easy to anticipate. I mean, of course, you can find many of the criteria being ticked, but then if the boxes are ticked, everyone sees it that way, and then it's also price matters, right? So this risk adjustment, I guess that's your best leverage. If you are able to better evaluate risks and mitigate risks, that's how we think, more than everything is sorted out and it's perfect already.
Yeah, I think it's a great insight. Like, very good investments are not obvious, because sometimes I tend to think that there are some great investments, but it happens more in seed, I guess, like pre-Series A, that they have a lovely traction in the market. They're growing 200%, 300% year over year in revenue. They're burning, of course, but you see that they head to profitability. But the question normally is the team going to withstand the growth? Are they going to be able to expand to some of the countries, etc.? But in that case, that would be obvious. So the play is, how can I get there quicker than the rest of VCs? But what you're saying, it opens a different chance. It is like, no, you will not know. You can check all the marks, but therefore you're paying X. I'm not going to say any number, but X for the valuation. Therefore,
and then who is going to pay that then when you get out? By the time you get out, maybe you will, but normally we also don't only bet on the growth. So as value driver, we also try to really improve either the business model or the economics, the underlying economics, right?
Yeah.
To generate value also beyond growth. So if we don't see that, it becomes hard on the growth space to really find attractive terms.
How do you get to the best deals?
Well, the best deals is always if somebody pre-selected for us.
That's why.
Ideally, somebody who knows us and applied the right filter criterion. But I think personal introductions where somebody thought of us and sees a strong fit, that obviously means somebody has done some work for us and has probably seen more than one and has selected a very specific investment opportunity for us. And we have many of those just because of the fact how long we as partners have been in the market.
Yeah.
And how many people and entities we've co-invested with, and the number of people who've heard of what we do. And so we get a lot of direct introductions to individual investment opportunities.
It's curious because when I talk to people that is outside the VC and I try to explain this part, they're like, but I've heard that, and now with AI and everything, and you can filter out sources and deals and whatever. And it's like, yes, but still.
I guess another 20 years of training data, then maybe we'll get there.
Yeah, it's
but then the AI needs to anticipate also the adjustments in strategy that do happen.
Imagine, yeah, it's such a people-oriented business. It's a common place to say, but it is true. Sometimes when you say it to the outside, it's very difficult to understand.
Yeah, especially if somebody comes and say, "Hey, co-invest with me." So that's even more, right? I mean, he has done some work, he has seen various things in the market, has selected something for you. But on top, he's saying, I've done the work and I'll put some money into this. Let's do it together.
I mean, we have different sources of deals. The best sources of deals are deals that aren't on the market. And those, of course, are the hardest to find, right? And we do two things. I mean, the biggest source of deals is simply inbound, right? So we do LinkedIn. I do podcasts. I like talking to you, but I'm doing this because somebody might listen and send me a deal, right? So I've been doing a lot of, every 2 weeks I do Startup Insider exits and financing rounds podcasts. So that helps, right? These things. So we do a bit of marketing, but not much. But that helps. So we have inbound. That's one thing. The second thing is very close relationships to investors that are similar to us. So we know small funds in the Czech Republic, in the Baltics, in Spain, in Spain several, in France, that are like us and that know, and sometimes they know this is something that Daniel would like, or this is something that I'd like Daniel to be in. And then so we get those deals, right?
Yeah.
That's basically our network bringing us deals. And of course, I'm also in a lot, or actually in two organizations that give me a lot of special deal flow. And one is called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. I joined in 2001 when I was getting bored with Munich because that gave me a bit of a worldview. And I think I was member number 12 in Germany. And today we're like, I don't know, 300. But that's, of course, that's full of young entrepreneurs. So we don't solicit each other, but of course, this is where you meet young founders that are doing cool stuff. And that's why I'm still a member. And then there's YPO, which is a bit similar, but for bigger businesses. So I would say networks is where it comes from. But what you really don't want, we're also in lots of lists, and that's great to be in. But in the end, it's great if I get the deal because they know they want me for some reason.
Of course.
And the single best source is an ex-founder that sends you a deal.
I'm also curious about your difference in life between your startup life and your VC life. Which one would you prefer?
Well, obviously, I think the obvious answer now is the VC one because
otherwise you would be in a startup.
Exactly, exactly. I think I highly appreciate the operational experience because, as I said before, it gives you a different kind of insight, a different kind of connection and understanding for what the founders are going through, and I think that's very important if you're sitting on the VC side. And I think the stress level is at times the same. I think if you're in a startup that is growing fast, the operational stress is different and it's more constant than what you would have in the VC side of things. I would say
goes more in peaks, I guess.
Exactly. You have a different set of stress on the VC side. That's also like you have deployment pressure, portfolio work, what have you. But it's different to, I don't know, all of a sudden you have an operational issue because your logistics chain, there is an issue or a hiccup, or your chief sales officer leaves and you don't know, okay, what does that mean to our US expansion? Your CTO leaves and I need to step in as a founder again to lead the tech team.
That's when you wake up crying at 3 a.m. that you said.
Exactly. Exactly. But I mean, the best CEOs that I know, they're pressure ninjas at the end of the day. I mean, obviously it hurts them as well, but then they quickly shake themselves and say, okay, what's the solution actually? Okay, this is a problem, but how do I solve this? And that's amazing to see.
I have to ask you a question that in your case, actually, it also makes even more sense due to the background of DTCP. And it is that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you just said that in your case for the growth fund is all about financial returns. You have to build this relationship, etc., but it is all about financial returns. When I think about the corporate venture capital model, the example of wayra or others is like, okay, I try not only, of course I do look at the financial return, but I try to look at what's the relationship between the startup and Telefónica. Can I leverage on that? Because that's when I get the most sense of it, right? So what opinion do you have about corporate venture capitals in general in Germany?
Oh, well, in general, a good one. Okay. So I think the key here is that everybody needs to be aware of the fact that it's a slightly different approach. It is, as you said, the ultimate goal is also slightly different because in the CVC world, I don't really care if I make 2x on the deal or 3x on the deal, but if I have better access to that technology or to that team because I'm closer to them, this is what I want and where I really get the value out of that investment, and so there is a different rationale behind it, and that also takes a different skill set. It takes different processes and different people to pull that off. And so I'd say I in general I have a good view on that, and I think DT also with the capital in that sense makes an outstanding job from my perspective, because they realized that and said, okay, we need a clear separation of exactly these these two distinct strategies. Yep. And you have to just have take care. I think what the drawback on the CVC model sometimes is that you invest in startups very early, and then there is a tendency, do I use them as a prolonged workbench? And it's actually almost then a corporate company already, and not a startup anymore that has the room to grow. Or sometimes it's if people invest and then after 2 or 3 years they progress on their corporate career, then as a startup you lose the person that actually invested in you as the contact person. Yeah. These are things that I think both sides need to be mindful of. But if you are, then obviously that's also a good model that works, but with a different rationale. I think it's a different approach.
You said you did everything bootstrap so far in the last 4 years. So that means that I guess at the beginning you did it with some savings that the founders have. and then you start getting the first customers, and you've never looked for VC money at all?
Well, we have bootstrapped through product development, through our kind of market launch. Right now, and this is possible because, like I said, I was participating in the exit of Artisense before, and my co-founder is a successful musician in Germany. So we have invested a substantial amount, six-digit, into the first phase of the company. But we've also been able to build an amazing team. We have a former MD of Universal on board. We have a successful serial entrepreneur with several exits who's himself invested into VC funds as a CTO on board. We have a ex-KPMG M&A guy as a CFO. This team is amazing, and we have literally zero burn for personnel at this point. So we have no pressure to fundraise. At the same time, our traction is beautifully developing with all of these kind of events that we're doing. We're starting off with cultural because we're really creating visibility, great content. We're selling it then into our core first market, which is corporate, obviously. And we're building a team. And this is only possible because we were able to build this up to a level where people really see the substance, really they love this vision, right? And this is a great situation. And back to your question, clearly we will have to bring external capital on board because we have a substantial development roadmap. It's a 7-digit budget for a seed phase of typically 18 to 24 months, where we kind of replace, you could say, market products from our solution with proprietary software that we build both on embedded side as well as on server side, which also enables us to offer more services, cloud-based services to our customers. And also we want to build our teams because we have so much, you could say, upper funnel in our traction that we have to pick the projects we do. And if we could now bring on, even if it's an interim financing model, we could literally scale the traction we have by adding more people who execute on delivery and sales, which is a great situation to be in, obviously.
There are a couple of things you said I wanted to ask you about. And first, there's one question that I get asked sometimes from seed startups, and is that when you put your money into the startup to build it, how do you deal at the beginning with your salaries? Because some people are like, should I put a salary? Because I'm paying myself. So up until what point should I earn? But I think I should earn. But then, like, how did you guys did it in your case?
My strong belief is that in pre-seed and seed, any money you take out of the company can only be taken out to basically enable you to do your job. So it's only paying for the freedom to execute. Any dollar you take out on your savings account, doesn't make any sense. No investor would like to see you're taking out a salary where you put money on your savings account, where you just sold them that you will have to build something amazing, which is in seed in the very beginning. So whatever compensation you take out in a seed round after you brought in investors should merely cover your costs so you can do your job at maximum impact.
The other thing you mentioned as well that I try to point out sometimes is related to AI, which I love that you mentioned the year and that you did AI back then already, because I also had a friend who just recently last year sold his company that he built 15 years ago in AI. And I like the fact that now people talk about AI like random.
It didn't fall out of the sky in 2020.
Yes. She was doing it way before you were born, maybe. So it's like, So I just love that. And now just to emphasize the fact that AI existed way before. It's going to be after, probably still. Something changed in the model, something changed in the awareness of the people, but it didn't come from nowhere. It comes from people like you and others who were investigating on it for long years.
It's a collective achievement, and AI couldn't have become what it is without the computer power and the data. So these are the two major aspects that.
How was it at the beginning? What was your impact when you saw it, or when you for the first time you listened to it and you were like, because it would be like a mix between machine learning, and what was it at the beginning? How was your impression?
There was no machine learning.
There was no machine learning either.
No. There were, 5 areas. That's how I learned it. It's natural language processing, vision, robotics, theoretical computer science, and the theory, and expert systems.
Okay.
So these are the 5 areas back then. That's how we defined it. There was no machine learning. Machine learning came much later. And so you kind of picked and chose what area. My girlfriend, she became a professor in theoretical computer science, and I picked expert systems because I wanted the application, and I loved integrated circuits, and I loved building those and using combining expert system tools. We had back then there were Lisp machines, Lisp being the programming language for Lisp processing, and they built computers, hardware, that would enable you to build easily expert systems. So there were like Texas Instruments, and Symbolics was a company back then. And I remember, I'll never forget, in 1983 when the International Joint Conference on Artificial Intelligence was at Karlsruhe. That's how I got in touch. And John McCarthy was there, and he was talking about AI and so on. And at the exhibition, I saw, such a system was the knowledge engineering environment key. Done by IntelliCorp, and Tom Kaler, who was president at the time. I wanted to work for them, and I did eventually. And I used these systems and knowledge engineering environment to program, faster and in a way that made so much sense, object oriented.
Okay. Okay.
But because there were like 2 types of expert systems at the time, the rule-based and the object-oriented tools that also used rules. But rule-based was used for diagnosis, was a very, simple way of doing, expert systems. So today, that's why yesterday I asked this woman, what about rules? Rules-based is in AI as well.
That's it.
Anyways.
That's it. Because just to dig a little bit deeper on these rules, because the way I imagine them from the outside is like, okay, so if, like a kind of a loop, if this, and this happens, then this and this and this, if, then, and then you keep going down the code, right? Is it the way it was like at the beginning when you knew about it, it was like a series of rules that just happen that will help me to code faster because I don't have to do it in an iterative way. The machine will do it alone. That was the beginning.
That was the very beginning, yeah. And it was how it, you would build diagnostic systems for, various, for a doctor, for instance, or in manufacturing, like how do you diagnose a certain thing? That's how it worked back then. But then when object-oriented tools came along, they integrated, because the most important thing is today, even with machine learning is different, but is how do you do knowledge acquisition? How do you bring the expertise from an expert into the system? That's the most important thing. Today is an issue. So now we have a lot of data, and so there are a lot of startups that try to help to structure that data in a meaningful way, so that you don't end up with the LLM, blabbermouth, right? So you still need a lot of, knowledge acquisition and the structuring of data is extremely important. So then the rules are part of the objects and the way you structure. I don't want to go into the details, but there are rules in there that connect the objects with one another to come to a meaningful response, because you want the system to support you in your life. So you ask a question and you get an answer. Yeah. So there are many ways. But the neural nets came along, which are a totally different way of creating, this world, which then accelerated everything in a totally different way.
And while you were doing this, you were in US, and that's how you arrived to Mosaic, and that's where we stopped. But I stopped you before. So that's how you arrived to Mosaic and Oracle back then. like through this?
Oracle came 10 years later. I came back after my exchange program. I was a visiting scholar at the Stanford University, came back to Germany and finished my studies here. And then I was hired by this IntelliCorp, this object-oriented tool product, and worked for IntelliCorp for a while. And then my career took off, and I was hired away by, what back then was Digital Equipment Corporation. Nobody knows who they are. They were the second largest computer manufacturer in the world after IBM, and they failed to keep up. Yeah, so they were later acquired by Compaq, who's not longer around. That was acquired by Hewlett Packard.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's a long way, but then the AI winter came.
Yep.
And so I worked in different areas. That's how I ended up then at Oracle Corporation.
Today, for example, you decided to run a disinformation campaign, and tomorrow you run it. That probably wouldn't work like that because you need an infrastructure. For example, there is a case. I'm not sure if so basically, when Russia was invading Ukraine, they established a big network of Telegram channels in all of the cities they planned to occupy. Really? And they established those channels way ahead, like weeks, months ahead. And they started fueling people, adding bots there, and then activating those channels as the invasion goes, even in the places where they never managed to get to. So what that shows is that, and in many of the other cases, when we are doing the research of the disinformation narratives and how they are spreading, you have hundreds of channels linked in the networks, like posting and reposting, engaging, sharing. Some channels are then channeling that to the other platforms and so on. Oftentimes that takes time to set up accounts, get the traction, connect them, and so on and so on. The idea is that you need to follow the infrastructure, you need to follow those accounts, their connections, and so on. And if you have a very good tracking of the infrastructure in place, if you already established this, let's say, 50 channels that are spreading the conspiracy theories about telecoms, right? And then when the new thing pops up there, it would be very easy to track. So my point is that there is lots of homework that need to be done on the system side, and then you can quite quickly detect things. And with the elections, it's often also the case when you have the disinformation campaigns and the infrastructure that's been prepared and used for a long time. It's rarely just a single TikTok channel that appeared today and disappeared yesterday that makes an impact.
Then I guess that the point is that person would be hiring some of those services probably to someone else. I guess not that they already have the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so too. Yeah, if this person is really deliberate to do that, which you shouldn't, then most likely they will try to hire someone. I think that would be the easiest, because it wouldn't be that easy to just, for example, if you would like to spread some fake story, right? So you need to be to make sure that the story would be picked up and so on and so on. That wouldn't be that easy to drop the story and it would be just picked up. For example, if I go tomorrow and release a fake fake financial statement for Citibank, who would listen to me? I need to release it in the right channel,
of course,
in the right time, in the right format.
You need to cook it a little bit.
Yeah, so it needs to be cooked. Then the right number of engagement need to go. It would need to be picked up. So there is an entry level to do that. It's decreasing with time because you can use lots of Gen AI nowadays and so on to generate lots of those content. But
the good thing is that Gen AI is not a problem for you so far, because you're able to identify them anyway through also the bots, not the content itself, but maybe the accounts that the information comes from.
Yeah, I mean, also some of the, not all of the Gen AI is necessarily a disinformation. Some people use it for for the other purposes, but just for their work. I think half of the LinkedIn,
I was going to
99% of the
tell you.
LinkedIn is probably Gen AI.
Man, I'm so tired of these articles with the icons that we sometimes use it for what's in store. But it's like, this is not new. Like, I'm not going to read it. Like, if I spend...
As soon as you have the bullet list and it starts with 2 words, title, and then the details, I'm like, oh, ChatGPT. I know you. That's ChatGPT. So, but then what I was trying to make a point is that Gen AI in itself is just an instrument that those disinformation players are using to make their operations more efficient.
Yeah, of course.
In this, there was a recent case that we've discovered. As I was telling you about this big network of Facebook groups, getting lots of people with this generated content, manipulative generated content. So what they were doing later, they would later start posting links to the one-day websites, with just ridiculous amount of advertisement. And therefore, those websites would get huge traffic because of we've seen the groups with the total account of subscribers reaching more than 1 million. So imagine that you just posted a link in all of those groups to the website, and then you feel lots of traffic. So eventually, what they would do, they would just burn lots of advertisement budgets, and this is a simple I'm not sure even how to call it, scam or a simple advertisement scam or so.
I've also seen it this kind of in a different way, maybe too. So, for example, if your SEO is very good and you're top ranked, and then your competitor goes below and they want to throw you down, they can drop this kind of attack that is like, okay, I will drop your link to a lot of crappy bots that they will get in your site. Google will know, and then they will take you down because they think you're getting this, which is so bad. But then Google should be in this, and Meta should be into this, because, I want you to prove me wrong, is that the case? But this shouldn't be happening because it's your platform. So Google, Meta, Telegram, they should be able to detect this before and not allowing it to happen, not you. What are the most exciting technologies that you've seen that you think that in the future, and by future, I mean 3, 5, if you want to make it fancy, 10 years, but that you see right now in the market that are like, wow, first, I love that. Second, I think the potential is huge.
So I think, maybe need to preface kind of the focus area that I have, and then I can also talk about what we're investing in as well. So I focus mostly on industrial tech. Okay. So that can be shop floor, that can be supply chain stuff, that can also be industrial climate tech. So they're also the hardware component. And I think in that area, what is super, super interesting is to see companies, and this is not so much technology, but moving away from just being a supplier of the supplier, and just manufacturing this tiny, small component or this kind of small software part, and moving towards being full stack provider of a given product. That can be setting up own factories, that can be setting up own chemical process plants, stuff like this, because I think a lot of startups are realizing there's just too much variance and too much stakeholder management involved. If you have a new technology and want to bring this to market in an industrial world, it just takes way too long to introduce this to the market if you have to kind of sell it through multiple levels and then get it used at some point. And I think the clearest point where we see this is kind of in this whole area of software-defined manufacturing, where it's really kind of thinking from the software, or thinking kind of the software first and then building the manufacturing around it. And because I think there you have the opportunity, if you control the whole environment around it, that you can really kind of push the limits of a technology in this kind of software-driven, software-defined context. And this can be like if we take portfolio companies as an example to maybe make it more tangible. One company is Turn2X. They're producing green methane gas. So they're not just selling kind of the
the catalyst to produce this, or the reactor, or some component to it, or the IP, but they're actually building an entire unit that is taking in energy and CO2 and producing green methane
in Germany.
They've set up their first plant in Spain because of kind of cheap electricity, and then pumping it into kind of the gas pipelines for German industrial companies to use this. I mean, you could have thought about a way where you're just kind of delivering the small component, but actually building that reactor yourself enables you to have so much more control over the whole process, over the whole cost profile, how you deliver this to market. And you see that in other parts as well. We've invested in Daedalus, which is a kind of company that does high precision machined parts. So they're not just selling the software to control the robot inside of a existing manufacturing plant, but they're actually building factories to deliver machine parts.
Building the whole factory.
Yes, because they say, hey, there's so much kind of weird variances going on. If we have to adapt to every single old manufacturing plant, then it's just going to be a hell of software development. This way, they can say, hey, we set up the software stack once, we gather all of the data, so we can put in machine learning along the way. So they have kind of a co-pilot to take the CAD design and put it into the machine, produce it at a super high precision level. And they can control all of the variables in there, do it at kind of a fraction of the cost that you usually have, way less manpower, way higher on-time deliveries. And I think this is in the area that I'm looking at, kind of a large trend that also will take a lot of on the capital side to transition to, because obviously VC doesn't want to finance one factory after another.
Yeah, that's what I was exactly. That was going to be.
And the founders don't want to finance this through equity, so you will have more asset financing. You will have more private equity funds coming in later on that say, hey, okay, we understand how to scale up a factory. We'll be your partner. You'll deliver the software to us and kind of give us basically the McDonald's blueprint, and we become the franchise owner. So I think this type of stuff, it's less of a technology topic. I mean, it's kind of basically taking together all of the technology components that have come up in manufacturing over the last 10 years, which kind of under Industry 4.0, some people already are now at 5.0, 7.0, or whatever. IIoT and advances on the machining side, meeting a workforce that is getting significantly older. Everything is getting more expensive, and so you kind of have to fuse this together in some coherent mass, but you can't just retrofit this to a lot of the existing industrial base, but you kind of have to, in a lot of cases, just take out a part of the supply chain and swap it out with something new in that regard. I think this is kind of one slice of the stuff that we're looking at, that I'm looking at. I think then we have, we're doing quite a bit on the next-gen computing side. So that can be kind of universal solvers for kind of the stuff that sits between the microchips and the AI model, to basically be that communicating glue between them. We're doing stuff on the infrastructure level there, software infrastructure, cloud computing, machine learning. We're doing a lot on quantum computing as well, both on hardware and software, and then also quite a bit on the
quantum on hardware as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it super expensive?
Yes. I think if you look at quantum, it's relatively mature, or it's not a mature ecosystem, but you have kind of had the first wave of quantum hardware that has scaled up, has taken a lot of money. And I think the large amounts of money that are sunk into quantum computing right now is pretty much a function of how hard it is to scale those quantum computers. And one company that we've looked at and are currently kind of in the process of closing that round. So maybe if the podcast airs, we're done with the investment. Is basically solving that hardware limitation on scaling the core component of the quantum computer. So kind of scaling the qubits at a high fidelity and at kind of reasonable scaling costs. So that this is kind of the bet on the hardware side. On the software side, it's more so this: you have to figure out what are efficient algorithms that fit to specific problems and to specific hardware.
Yeah.
So basically, rebuilding what you have on the traditional computing architecture and fitting this to the quantum world and having kind of this intermediary software stack that is in between.
Yeah, this second one, you said too, like this manufacturing kind of setting up own factories as a trend, which I was not expecting this. But I think I feel that there's a kind of a slight trend in the industrial in general that is like, maybe the delocation didn't work that well. So maybe we need to build it here. But then there's the second problem. There's, it's super expensive. The land is super expensive. The workforce is super expensive. How do we manage to make it then profitable? But very interesting that you mentioned it. And the second one is this next-gen computing. With this one, I could think of from your perspective, that could be one area of interest. But I was thinking that we can even make one episode just talking about this, the trends, because it's so interesting. And I think there's a huge area of like educational area that for the general audience that has not been covered yet in a friendly manner, let's say. Because, for example, I like to dig a little bit into technologies, just a bit. And I find that if I want something educational, meaning easy, it's something super superficial.
Yep.
It will never get into details. And if not, I have to go to the PhD that has a YouTube channel that talks really in detail about it. Do 5 hours with a blackboard and will tell you everything. It's like, we need to find some common ground here. But this I will note this down for the future. Maybe if you want to come, and even with a startup in the case, we could do something quite nice.
And I think this is also a large part why we started First Momentum, because it's I think in general, if you take the general population, like you hear over and over again, self-driving is just around the corner. We will have solved cancer in the next 10, 20 years. And it's super hard to validate, because as you said, then you go into that rabbit hole of listening to some PhDs or professors, and they also then start arguing kind of against each other because everyone has their own funded research track, and so everything else is just kind of idiocy. And so I think it's super hard to get a sense for where are we actually. And I think then the reality of technical progress for a lot of people is online banking still looks like the early 2000s.
Good point.
Trains keep breaking down. Most of the buildings in Germany don't have AC. We still have the dirtiest grid in Europe. So it's like, where are we making technical progress? And so I think like just having
good rant.
But I mean, like you won't get a positive view on technology if you don't show stuff that is actually getting better. And I think the only part where people have seen tech improving something is maybe on the consumer side. But the rest is basically hidden. And then you still have prices going up like crazy. So people are like, okay, well, what is all of this money that we're spending on research and subsidizing stuff? Like, where is this going? Like, I don't feel it.
That's a very good point. We should maybe build a kind of a show for the government. Like, you need to tell the people what you're doing with the money. And
I mean, I think it's not from a bad intent from a lot of politicians, but I think it's just tech is also not good at communicating what they're doing, and I think also I think deep tech is always a little bit of a stupid term. Like, what does deep tech mean? I think the problem mainly is that you call everything that deals with the internet tech, where it's just maybe something else and maybe not so technical anymore. Like, if you're building a price comparison site, sorry, that's not super technical anymore. It was at some point, but it's pretty much a solved problem, I would say. maybe someone will scream at me in the comment section, but I think there's also this difference of like, okay, is really the technical edge of what we're building, is this really Instagram? And kind of improving the algorithms there by a couple percentage points each year.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very technical, but I think that's not technical progress as like, okay, we want to have the flying car.
Yeah. I was thinking that I got a bit stuck when you said what's deep tech. And I've always thought that by default, deep tech is something that is not obvious and that it will take you many years to do. And it's something that will completely, radically change a field. That's what deep tech I would think. When I think of something, is deep tech or not? It depends. Does it radically change the field that it is in? Do you need a lot of money before? Then okay, then maybe is it obvious? Okay, no, it's not obvious. Then could be, but that's as from the outside looking at it, it's like that could be. Is it similar for you?
Yeah, I think that's kind of generally the right direction. But I think if you're speaking with different people, then kind of deep tech becomes like a very broad term.
And the frontiers got blurry.
Yeah,
I would imagine. Yeah, it's like not as much as with AI, because now you're saying the comparison. We do this pricing comparison, and we build AI on top. Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, you have a machine that will say this price was before $699, now it's $652. Is smaller.
But is
that AI?
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's engineering in the end. Kind of the technical stuff is solved by OpenAI or whoever else built the model, and then the company that is implementing has to do some smart engineering around it.
Yeah.
But that's usually not super hard, and it's more so, I think, also to figure out what is the right delivery method for the consumer and how do you make it kind of a good product experience, and not so much about the technical side of things necessarily.